Welcome back to another Guns Contractors video. Today I am back on my car park job. I've been off here for a couple of weeks helping somebody else with some tree planting, which has been pretty successful, but never managed to really film much on that, so that's why it's been a bit quiet. Back to my car park job. That's got to be finished this week. Weather is sort of on side. We've had a lot of rain over the weekend, which is causing a bit of havoc with the sub base, but you know, trying to put something in December, these are the problems you have to face. In the summer, this would be a much easier job. And of course, yeah, you have to remember that when you're pricing these things. But it's not been too bad. I got it all dug out, if you remember, when it was dry. In November, we had that dry spell, so that was a complete bit of luck, really. And I got most of the crush pushed out before the rain really kicked in. So I didn't do too badly, and I stayed late one evening and rolled it up. So it's not too bad, but there's a couple of areas that are just starting to get a bit soft, especially because I tried re-rolling it yesterday just to sort of get a bit of a final compaction on it, and yeah, it just started bringing the water up in places. So you kind of have to just go, right, well, that's as good as it's going to get. I'm now capping it with a layer of type 1. That's the specification that's been asked for from this client. So just a thin layer, really, like about 50 mil I think I've allowed, which works out at about 100 tonne. So I've had 5 loads delivered yesterday, and yeah, this morning working on getting it spread out. Did a little bit yesterday, got a bit dark, and it's difficult to see where your levels are when it gets dark. No matter how good your work lights are, you just can't see levels good enough, I don't think, in the dark. So here we are, back in the daylight. This is not quite my final job before Christmas. There is another little can you just sneaky one coming in, which may even have a little bit bolted on the back of that. But if I can get this one done, that'll be at least this machine done for Christmas, and I can get it back in the workshop and do a couple of things to it before January starts again, and we go again, right? So it's the joy. The winter, the Christmas break is, when you're self-employed, is not really a break. It's an opportunity to fix all of the stuff that you haven't managed to fix most of the year, and I think I've got at least 4 different items of kit that need work on. So yeah, joys of running kit, joys of running plant, I guess, and having the more stuff you got, the more stuff's going to break. Anyway, that's the job today. I'll talk you through what I'm up to, trying to, again, really still learning this front bucket, managing to do it all with the 3CX. It seems pretty easy, to be honest, but taking bucketfuls of type 1, spreading them round, just opening that 4-in-1 and just getting that nice layer of type 1 spread around. It's just knowing how to kind of work the area, really. You want to work yourself out the corners, I think, because it's difficult to get into a corner if you're sort of pushing the material there, and then I'm just trickling it about. Now, I guess I could probably just stove into the heaps with the bucket open and push them about, but I'm just concerned I've only got a set amount of material here, and I don't want to put too much down. If I start laying it at 75 mil, 100 mil on average, I'm obviously only going to get half the distance that I allowed. So I'm kind of going with a, you know, like I would with a dumper. I'd have dotted it around previously with a 360 machine, and then I'd have spread my heaps out there, and I could have kind of seen as I went how thick I'm laying it, and that's kind of what I'm doing with the front bucket, really. And then just running it over and over it in different ways to try and fill the little divots in, little undulations that are in it, and get just a consistent, smooth finish, really. Then we'll fire the roller up and give it a final roll. But we'll have to see on that how much rolling we do, because again, I don't want to bring that moisture up through the material too much. So the type 1 I've got is nice and dry, which is good. It must have been in a shed somewhere, because yeah, it's not soaking wet from the storm over the weekend, which is ace. You start with wet material, you've got wet ground, you're in trouble anyway, aren't you? So that's the job. We will see how we get on. Very much a learning curve as always with the backhoe, but I am getting better at it. So yeah, it's a pretty productive beast. Bearing in mind, I had thought for this car park that I'd need to use an 8-ton machine, track machine, and a dumper, because I just thought it was going to be too wet to use the Jake. But actually, it's worked out okay, and I've been able to do it on my own in, yeah, quite a few less days than I thought it would take. So it shouldn't be too bad a job in the finish up to Christmas, which would be nice, wouldn't it? And it can certainly pay for a few hydraulic hoses on this old girl, because she's decided to start doing a few. Anyway, let's see how we get on. So I've just been kind of working in sort of passes really to try and spread this material out as evenly as I can, you know, dropping it out of the front bucket, and then it's a little bit easier to then just sort of float the material around to get it to actually fill in its own sort of little divots in the crush and inconsistencies and bits like that. And it's pretty good. It does leave a few holes sometimes in the material, you know, you're not getting an even spread around, and you have to sort of maybe sometimes go back and just drop a little bit in there and drop a little bit in there, but it's not too bad on the whole. I think, again, you know, you're starting with a material that's, you know, got a few holes in it anyway with that crush. And yeah, it's the best I can do or think of doing at the moment. Always open to suggestions, but I got my piles tipped along the edge here so that they weren't sort of in the way, and then thought, well, you know, I can kind of work my way along, and then I know roughly how far I've got to go, because, you know, if this pile, for example, runs out before I'm over halfway, then I know I'm in trouble, right? I've used too much material. That was my thinking, right? So, you know, just by simple logic maths, I've allowed 5 loads. 2 have done that far so far. So I don't know, is it quite halfway? Maybe it's just under halfway, which is good. It means I should, in theory, have a bit of excess, which isn't a bad thing, because I've got a little footpath that they want to do as well now. So if I have any material spare, we'll try and use it in that. But yeah, it's you know, that's kind of, I do that quite a bit with material. You know, if you can be smart about how you distribute it around the job, then you've got half an idea of kind of how you're doing versus what you've got left to do, and you'll know if you're going to be short a little bit ahead of time. That's my thinking anyway. It doesn't always work like that, but you know, we try our best. I have got better though. Somebody gave me a good tip about filling this front bucket up, so you get like a good load in it, get a good clam, and then, you know, so it's almost up to the rail, and then as you're closing and rolling back, you actually drive forwards into the pile that you've got, and it seems to keep more gear in. I know some will always fall out over the front of the jaw, but yeah, it was a good tip, to be honest, and it's worked pretty well. So that's a handy little one if some people didn't know, or you're looking at getting a backhoe yourself. These little tips are like gold dust really from the guys who have driven these things for years, and I am very much still in that learning process. You can of course just scoop up traditionally, especially when you've got a bigger pile. It's easy obviously just to get the bucket into it and you know, get a normal traditional scoop. But I don't want to lose traction on this ground and start ripping up my crush. It's very easy to do that, and that will cause you know, more trouble than it's worth. So I kind of do a few like grabs, or a few main scoops into the pile, then I'll grab it a bit and kind of get it, sort of try and condense it as you would really with any machine that you're using, because you know, you want it all in one heap to be able to grab it from, right? That's the plan. That one wasn't the most even of my spreads. It sometimes doesn't come out the bucket quite as well as you hope it would, you know, and you have to kind of do a little bit of fettling. But as I say, I am going to run over it and just float over the whole thing a few times just to try and get rid of these little ridges and bits and bobs. So now I've got like a line here. I've kind of been pushing it up into a bit of a heap, because I don't want to push it too far or it'll end up off the side of the car park, right? And then you can open the jaw up, sort of close over it. See how it's all up to, you might not be able to see, but it's all sort of up to the rail on the forks, and you can start closing, rolling back, and then hook forward. And I don't know, you just seem to be able to get a better bucket that way. It's almost like it pushes the last bit up the back of the jaw as the front jaw's closing. Yeah, works well. So this has been a bit of a, it wasn't a job that was on the agenda when I came to this site, but it's been a, you know, we need something, it needs to be done before Christmas, bit of temporary parking, what can you do? So it was a little bit of a kind of last minute job. As I say, that dry spell really in November helped me no end, because it allowed me to get it dug, and yeah, a few things have kind of gone right with it, and it's been a pretty successful job. Not that it's finished yet, of course, but that's where it helps. I mean, I've been on and off this job a lot, and it really helps to like own your own roller and things. Whilst it is an expensive thing, it doesn't really do an awful lot of work in terms of hours. The ability to be able to leave it on this job and come back at weekends, come back, because I've had to go to other sites, because obviously I was previously, you know, committed elsewhere, and I've been able to just sort of drop in and drop out, which has just worked really well. And whilst the roller doesn't necessarily earn its money in terms of the work it's done, it sort of is earning its money because it's just there at my convenience, which yeah is really just so handy. They don't ever do a lot of hours. I think mine's done about 120 odd hours now in, did I buy it 2021? Yeah, about this time. I've had it 3 years now, so it's not exactly done a huge amount of work, but the work it has done, all rollers just tend to sit there, you know, even when you hire them on a job, they end up sitting around so much, and yeah, just an expensive thing to have for the hours that they actually do. So owning one it's been all right. You know, all it's got to do is earn its insurance money back essentially every year, and earn a little bit of money towards its depreciation. And I mean, providing it doesn't get stolen, you know, it should be a great machine that'll probably last me a lifetime. So just have to hope and keep hold of it, really. But yeah, otherwise the tree planting job was a success. I sort of wish I could have filmed a bit more of it. A lot of the trees, big trees, I think they were about £8,000 each or something, so they're quite expensive trees, all down this driveway on a job that I've been on most of the summer, to be honest. It's been a huge landscaping job for a friend of mine, and we've dug out a load on the driveway, and yeah, it's a massive house. Yeah, cool place to work, lovely views, and the old backhoe has been busy up there. But the last job really for us this winter was to get these trees planted. Well, we had root ball season, because at the moment the trees are in a kind of dormant period, and now's the time to plant them, right? So that's what we were up to. We were craning them in mostly where you could reach them with the crane on the back of a lorry, so they would get delivered on a lorry. We had 4 a day, and then we were getting them, yeah, sort of just craned off and into the hole, so ready to go. So that was pretty straightforward. There were a couple though that we couldn't get the crane to, and that's where I knew the backhoe would be a winner, because you can spread the forks so wide and get them away from the actual kind of trunk of the tree when you're strapping it. And of course it's got the lift power to move them, so yeah, it worked really, really well actually. I was pretty pleased with that, and that's why I sort of think, you know, my idea of the 4CX would be even better for that. The bigger front wheels would cope better with the off-road terrain perhaps, and especially when you've got weight on them, I think they just bear the weight better. But it's really hard to know. So I've got a little hole over here which I need to do something about, so we'll just get a bit of material from here. 2 more piles left. Doesn't take long to distribute a pile, it really doesn't. You can certainly spread some material pretty quick. But if you think about it, a full bucket in this thing is got to be a couple of ton, especially with this dense material of Type 1. I know in the 4CX course we were putting 2.6 tons, I think, because we weighed it at JCB, which you've seen in another video. I think we were putting 2.6 tons in per bucket load because it's got a slightly bigger front bucket. Again, another advantage I think of the 4CX, but absolute monster bit of kit. Yeah, one day, but the old 3CX it's been a busy machine this year. In fact, I added up, we're nearly at the end of the year now, I added up sort of days of what's done what, and I mean traditionally my 8026 would have been by far my most kind of popular machine for me using and hire. You know, that's across the jobs that I do on price and across my day work. But actually this year the backhoe has been actually outnumbered the 8026, which it sort of surprised me actually. I think obviously helped by all those days that I did in the summer again for that landscaping job, but yeah, it's been she's been a busy old girl, which is good. You know, I've done, what am I on, 2,360 hours now, so since I've owned it, I've had this 2 years, it's got to have done 500 hours now. I think I put it with 1,800 hours on, nearly 1,900 maybe. So yeah, she's doing some work. Of course, that does include travelling and things, doesn't it? But I don't tend to do a lot of driving around. I've been lucky. I can leave the machine on a job, like that landscaping job was up north of Reading, so I had to drive it about 35 miles, which seems like a long way, but actually it doesn't take it. It takes 15 minutes longer than it does driving there in the pickup. Right, don't know what happened there. The camera had a funny 5 minutes and decided to cut out. So, as I was saying, yeah, it doesn't actually take that long to drive 35 miles. It's sort of, because of the traffic in Reading, it only takes about 15 minutes longer than it does if you use the pickup. So, I didn't really think that was too outrageous, really. So yeah, and it uses about, I reckon, about a litre a mile. Which, you know, isn't, it's not as bad as driving a Chieftain tank, I guess, but it's certainly pretty thirsty when she's travelling down the road. But actually, if you think about transport cost, you know, 30, what's that? Let's say it cost me 45 quid to drive it 35 miles, something like that. Yeah, it may even be a bit cheaper than that because I buy white diesel at wholesale price. So it's not quite as expensive as it is buying at the pump. Get a few pence off it at least, but you know, it's still a way cheaper item. It would cost you upwards of 250, 300 quid. I'd have thought. Certainly the last time I moved an 8-ton machine, track machine, that was the sort of cost for it. So it's a pretty efficient way to manoeuvre about. Yeah, as I say, I've been really happy with it for my business. It's been the machine that's actually ended up doing more work than the 8026 has this year. I've kind of added up all the days that I do in various machines and what machine gets used. Come on, here we go. What machine gets used and when, and how long for, and all of that sort of thing. Just to keep a track really of what machines get used in the fleet, and what's worth still owning and maybe what's worth selling and all of that sort of thing, except for the roller, as I've said, justifies itself in different ways. But yeah, the 3CX has been the busiest machine this year. It's close, you know, with the 8026, but normally I'd have been absolutely, well, I used to be flat out with that 3-tonner. That was the staple machine for everything. Of course, it's the one you own, isn't it? So you're always going to use the machine you own because you own it. But yeah, the old 3CX has done a fair bit of work this year, which is great, you know, and it's nice to be able to build a little bit of a business for it. because I do think that it is such a capable machine, and you know, on price work it's definitely proving itself 10 times over, for me anyway, in the kind of work that I do. Even the flexibility of just being able to use just the original idea of buying it, just being able to use it as a bit of power on a job. You know, it can come in for an hour, 2 hours, do a bit of work, and I can tidy it up with a 3-tonner. I've done that quite a bit. You know, it works really, really well for that. Or of course, it's starting, as I get better at driving it and more confident with it, to be, you know, a machine in its own right, really. The ability to use it for different jobs and sort of go, right, I can see how I can use it here to do this bit. Like this job, I'd have traditionally, it sounds crazy, but the kit that you own, right, I'd have used my little 1.5 ton dumper and my 3-ton digger, and I'd have distributed the stone around in little piles, and then I'd have gone around with the 3-tonner and knocked them about and made it work. And you know what, it would have done it. I know it would have done it, because I've built a lot of things like that. And okay, in some situations, if this was one of those multi-use games areas or something that needed to be to a high tolerance, that probably would still be how I would do it, because I'd have used iDig, I'd have set the laser up on the right grade, and you know, we'd have been doing it in a very different way, you know, a lot more accuracy as such. But this doesn't need to be like that, and as a result, it can be done a lot sort of rougher, really. You know, it doesn't matter as long as I've got a consistent grade here, which looks like I'm getting anyway, and should have by the end of the day. Then you know, the client's going to be happy, aren't they? It's not like it has to be within set falls and you know, tolerances. So I just don't know if I could achieve that with this front bucket. Possibly, and people will say, well, you know, could you fit iDig to it? Yes, I can. I will do, I hope, to it. There's a couple of compromises to be made with fitting iDig to it, which I'll explain in another video at some point, maybe if we do it. But yeah, can I fit it to the front end? No, not really. I don't think it'll work. So it's one of those things that you know, it would be the real advantage of this machine is the front end. The back end is great for power. You know, it's just got a lot of power, but it is less. Clearly, it's a 180, right? So it is less versatile than a 360. It's a little bit more awkward to work. So the back end is certainly not as good as an 8-ton digger. Although in some regards it's better. It depends if you need the reach and that kind of thing. But the front bucket is, if you can make that work on a job for you, it is so productive. Versus, you know, loading a dumper and, you know, even if you drove it yourself or whatever, or you had a second man on the job, I guess that would be even more expensive, wouldn't it? Even more justifiable for the fact that this thing just runs rings around it. I honestly think, and it would be great fun to do one day, you know, to test it, that this thing would load stone. I think you'd do it at least twice as quick if you were doing things like this on a short carry, pick and carry over longer distances. Clearly a 6-ton dumper is going to use, well, I know for a fact it carries about 3 times the amount of gear that this bucket does. So because I've loaded lots of 6-ton dumpers with the front bucket, so I know how much they take compared. And yeah, clearly a dumper is going to be a quicker machine for doing that, but it can't load itself. This can. It can't spread the material out as well, you know, as this can. So there is, even at both ends, you've got to have a machine to load it, you've got to have a machine to work it afterwards, and that is where this then starts to become way more efficient, I think, on the right job. So yeah, it's not like I'll never use a dumper and an excavator again. No, you know, no chance. That will always be a way that we tend to work in the UK, particularly. It's just what we know, but there is a lot of benefit on jobs for me running it with my own my own kit, the one machine, to do a task like this, which otherwise would have been probably a two-man operation. I mean, maybe people would have had 2 men on this anyway. I could have had somebody, couldn't I, raking, doing a bit of that kind of stuff. Maybe getting in the edges, jumping on the roller, maybe getting it rolled out. But if I do it in a day and I allowed 2 men for a day and I still do it in a day, then I've still saved a man's day, haven't I? Which is, a lot of money. Don't know if it quite earns me the 40x, but it certainly starts to, as a contractor, it starts to earn you some money back. The more labour you can save, a bit like the Encom, that's the whole point. That's how it justifies itself. It's the IDIG system. They're all saving labour, which is hard to find reliable labour, and it's expensive. These machines start getting very cheap when you look at how much you pay for a man for a day. So, man or lady, whoever. Anyway, I'll stop rattling on and need to get the rest of this all spread out, do a bit of concentrating. I'll get the time lapse going, see what it looks like.
Well, you can't be sad about that. That's taken about 3 hours, probably in total, maybe 4 hours in total to do, a little bit yesterday and the rest this morning to get all this spread out. And I am well chuffed with that. I mean, it looks good. It probably looks even better on camera, but it's hard to see. There's a couple of little lines in it and I've yet to roll it, so obviously that's probably going to change things, but that's 950 square meters, 100 tonne of type 1 pushed out pretty consistently over 4 hours, one man, one machine. I think that's pretty good going. So also my maths is incredible. Do you think, I had a little bit to get along this edge, which obviously I'll tidy up, brush in, roll, etc. But really, I don't think there's any deep bits. There's nothing hugely high. Yeah, I think I've worked out pretty well. That's not bad. Obviously, your maths if you're slightly out, the more tonnage you do, the more out you are. So to be this accurate over 100 tonne, well, even the crush, which was 250 tonne, I think, again, just worked out almost perfectly to the bucketful. So my maths is pretty accurate, which is nice. And yeah, a little bit of rubbish in it, which we'll throw out. But otherwise, yeah, I think we're ready for a roll, which is going to be a cold job. That roller is looking real cold over there. My family is still wearing shorts because, you know, it's still summer, isn't it? Anyway, I'll get this rolled, and that is my day done, hopefully. Second to last job before Christmas, so a little manhole job to do next week. It should take a day, maybe into a second day of just tidying up. I'm going to start pulling stuff back to the yard. So not a bad morning's work. I haven't finished it yet. We'll see what it looks like when I roll it, mind you. Could end up finding all the soft spots again, but I'm pretty confident this type one's good. It's nice and dry. It's quite bony as well, which is good, because I think I'd have struggled if it had been wet, as I said, and real fine. So I don't use scalpings really. Always try and use type 1. I just find it more consistent, particularly in the winter. Yeah. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next video. Please keep subscribing. Always helps me out. And yeah, see if I get on the roller.